One. Welcome, everybody, to the Rye Town Council meeting of July 21, 2022. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are you doing your thing? Okay, let's. Roll call.
Councilperson Pamela Jaffe. Here. Councilperson Jill Axelrod.
Here.
Councilperson Lindsay Ann Jackson.
She was.
Councilperson Thomas Nardi.
Here.
Lindsay is here via Zoom.
Yeah.
If the screen would ever come on,
Oh,
there she is.
yeah, there she is.
Councilperson Lindsay Ann Jackson.
Here.
Okay. Supervisor Gary.
Here.
Oh wait, Councilperson Thomas Nardi. I forgot
Here
all
again.
about him.
You did him already.
Yeah,
No.
that's okay. We do it again.
That's okay.
Supervisor
He's worth
Gary.
two of us.
I didn't do that.
May
I just heard.
I have a motion and a second, unless there are any changes or questions about the minutes of June 16, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Our first item tonight is a presentation from our auditors, Davies. We have Scott Oling and Melissa Szot. Floor is yours.
Thank you all very much. Good evening. My name is Scott Oling. I'm a partner at PKF O'Connor Davies. I'm actually pinch hitting tonight for Jeff Shaver, who's one of the engagement partners on the job. He's out of town. And I'm here, as the supervisor said, with Melissa Szot, who's also one of my partners at the firm, who was involved with the town audit. We have a brief PowerPoint presentation to give you tonight to go over the results of the audit for the town for the year ended December 31st, 21. We're going to, first I'll just speak about an overview of what we're going to go through and some of our required communications to you as your auditor. And then Melissa will take you through the 21 general fund summary of your revenues for 21, your expenditures for 21, and your results compared to what your budget expectations were when you started the year. And then she'll do a deeper dive into your general fund revenues and also then the expenditures. And then she will show you where your fund balance ended up for 2021. And then she'll do a quick debt service summary for you as well. So anyway, we stand here today. Obviously, the audit is complete. That's why we're presenting this to you tonight. Management has reviewed these financial statements and has, approved their issuance for you. From our perspective, the audit report contains what's known as an unmodified opinion or a clean opinion, and that basically means that we believe these financial statements fairly present what happened financially for the town for the 21 year. We're also happy to report that in reviewing your internal control processes, we did not come across what we would deem any material weaknesses in those controls, that the controls you have in place are reliable enough in our opinion, to generate the numbers that we're about to discuss with you. And of course, we would have to report to you if we found any instances of fraud during the audit, and I'm happy to say we did not come across any of those. As to your folks' responsibility as the town council and management, who is also here in the audience, it is your job to select and implement the appropriate accounting policies that generate this information. To make sure that the financial statements fairly present numbers in accordance with what's known as U.S. GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles, that you establish a way to make sure, as I just mentioned, that your internal controls are strong, that you comply with all laws, New York State laws, any federal laws for any federal money you might have, and then providing us with any financial information that we request, that you don't hold back any information that would be pertinent to our audit. And of course, as the leaders of the town, setting the proper tone at the top. So with that, I will turn the numbers part over to Melissa, and
Great, thank you. So on this slide, this is going to be the summary of the 2021 general fund revenues and expenditures. compared to budget. So just to go over the columns first before we dive into the actual numbers, you have your first column, which is your original budget. That's the budget that was adopted. Second column is your final budget. That would include any budget amendments or budget transfers that were made during the year. The third column is your actual results, so what actually happened at 12/31/2021. And then the last column is the variance, which would be your actual versus your final budget. So the first line is your revenues. You anticipated receiving $5.4 million of revenues, but your revenues actually came in almost $2 million better at $7.5 million. Your expenditures, you anticipated spending $5.6 million, but you actually only spent $5.1 million, so that was a budgetary savings of $512,000. That brings you to the next.
That's good, right?
That's good,
That's good.
yes. So that increases your fund balance about $2.3 million, but you have to factor in any transfers or out and then premiums that you received. So that netted, you anticipated using about $215,000, but it actually netted to only $102,000. So overall, for your fund balance, based on your budget, you anticipated using $400,000 of fund balance, but as you can see, you had a budgetary surplus of 2.6, so you increased your fund balance from 1.7 up to $3.9 million. So that's great. So we'll go ahead on the next slide, go into more detail about how you got there. So this slide focuses on the general fund revenues. The first line I want to take you to is your real property taxes. You can see in your original budget, you anticipated receiving $2.27 million, and that was an increase in your levy from prior year related to the increased debt service that you'll have and the absorption of the justice court of the village. But if you look at the variance with the final budget, you actually received $1 million more than what you levied. So as a town, you would normally anticipate receiving 100% of what you levy, but under general governmental accounting, it all has to do with the timing, the availability period of when you receive the taxes, and that allows us to determine how much we can recognize as revenue. So,
Excuse me, does that also reflect the fact that we collected tax arrears?
yes,
Substantial amount of tax
yes,
arrears?
exactly. And in addition, included in this $1 million is your receivable. Your taxes receivable decrease almost $800,000. So that means people were paying taxes and you collected much more as a town. So there's less outstanding at 12/31. The next item is going to be your other tax items. Came in over budget about $487,000, and that's mainly due to the interest and penalties on those taxes that were collected. The departmental income line, you anticipated receiving $275,000, but you actually received $413,000. That was mainly due to the Crawford Park fees. So again, COVID happened, and the lessening of the COVID restrictions allowed for a lot more of those departmental fees coming in. The next line I want to point you to is state aid. You received $460,000 more than what you anticipated, and that was mainly due to the increase in the mortgage tax payments that you received, which the housing market was very active. Last item is the insurance premium. There was no budget here, but you did receive $512,000 of premium on that new bond issuance of $6.485 million of bonds that you received. Moving on to your expenditures. So most of your expenditures came in line to what you actually budgeted. There's two items I wanted to point you to here. One is your general government support. You only spent $3.1 million, but you anticipated spending $3.5 million. So it's a savings of approximately $380,000. And that was mainly in the judicial department relating to personnel vacancies. Then the last line is your transfers out. You can see that you spent $400,000 over budget. And this transfer of the $615,000 was mainly related to your band pay down. So you paid more in the band than you anticipated, which your band ended up rolling into that 6.485 bond, which we discussed. So moving on to your fund balance, as we discussed, your total fund balance ending 12/31/21 is up Last year was 1.7, this year it's 3.9 overall. So we're required to put these fund balances in buckets versus what you can spend. So your non-spendable is your prepaid. Those are funds that are earmarked and will be spent next year. You do have a restriction this year, which is new, and that's at $512,000 in premium, which are required to be spent on debt service related items, so your principal and interest and your future payments. The assignment is 0 this year, so that what that means is you did not anticipate utilizing any fund balance in your 2023 budget. So that, I'm sorry, 2022, thank you, budget. So that would be at the 0 in there. Whereas in 2020, you anticipated using the 400,000, which we saw on the summary tab. And that brings you down to your unassigned, your $3.37 million. So that you can see increased significantly from the 1.2 last year. So we like to look at this as a percentage of your subsequent year's budget, so your 2022 budget, of the 6.9 million. So you're about 49% of your next year's budget. So looking at your debt service and what you're going to continue to pay in the future for these bonds. So you have your 2017 bond outstanding, which matures October 2036, and that's about $6 million. Your 2021 bond that you just issued, that actually matures September 2041, and that is at $6.485 million. So looking forward, each year from 2022 to 26, it averages for your principal and interest payment about $925,000 a year.
So just to be specific, Melissa, there's a typo on the slide?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
It should say September 2041. Thank you. So I think that's all we have. If you guys have any questions or...
Council, start with, any questions, Lindsay? You're on mute. You're on mute.
I apologize. I was just interested in your take. I know that we did have some accounting changes that were made in 2021 that led to budget transfers actually for a significant portion of the budget. I believe it was nearing around 3 million out of a total of 5.8 million. Do you guys have any input on that and how to avoid the need for larger sum budget transfers in the future?
Could you restate, Lindsay, we're having, there's
The
a lot
fan's
of
very loud.
background noise here.
Debbie, have Matt turn the fan off. I think we can handle it for half an hour.
Sorry, I apologize.
No, it's not you, it's the fans if you're in the room.
I was interested in your input. I know that 2021, we did have a significant total of fund balance transfers. And I know that a lot of them had to deal with making accounting changes as per recommended. But do you have anything to add to that number? I mean, that's a sizable amount of our total budget. I think that was 3 million out of a $5 million
Right.
budget.
The overall budget didn't end up being amended, so it was just a transfer between lines. So ideally you would want to, like when you do your budget, you'd want to do a historical analysis and then try to budget appropriately of what you anticipate spending. But obviously it is an estimation, so you will have to adjust in order to put money into certain lines that maybe you're going to underspend in other lines. So it's a good,
Correct.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I guess my concern was the amount that was being transferred from line to line within the budget. And, you know, I understand as far as paying out, you know, revenue, a certain amount of money to spend, and we've spent well within that confine. But as far as moving money around within the account after the budget's passed by the board, I was just wondering if there were any comments as to that.
Yeah. Right now, you know, we just put back the slide on the general fund expenditures. And if you look at the original budget and the final budget column, again, these are our summary. This is a very high-level summary of what happened in the budget. There's more detail in the actual audit report. But overall, like you could see, like in the general government support area of the budget was only modified about $40,000. Down from $3,564,000 to $3,521,000. Now, there's a lot of things that may make that up, but overall, it was about a $40,000 decrease there. Then there was about 107,000 increase in the various culture and recreation type
Recreation.
functions. And, that was probably due to, more activity coming back online in '21 than had been, during the, high COVID year in 2020. And then there was a decrease in employee benefits from 905 to 841. My guess is in most places, you estimate what like health insurance might go up by, and it might have gone up a little less, thankfully, maybe, at that point than what had been anticipated. So the employee benefit budget was reduced overall by about $60,000. And then the rest of the lines, there were no changes.
Okay.
So
Thank
overall,
you.
and you could see at the very bottom, both the original and final budget remained at a total of $5.8 million.
Great, thank you.
All right, any other comments from the council? No? May I have a motion and a second to accept the report?
So moved. I'll second.
Please call the roll, Hope.
Councilperson Jaffe?
Yes.
Councilperson Axelrod?
Yes.
Councilperson Jackson?
Yes.
Councilperson Nardi?
Yes.
And Supervisor Zuckerman?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Stay
Thank you,
cool.
Scott, thank you, Melissa. We'll see you, we'll see you next year. Leave it off, Scott. Scott, leave it off. The air conditioning is working,
Oh, it is?
apparently. I feel it. This will be an incentive to move the meeting along.
Okay.
We're happy doing that.
Our next item is a resolution regarding a tax cert at 2 Highland. Dan?
I have to get this down from Scott Height. Good evening, Mr. Supervisor. Yeah, we have this, this resolution. We've, recommending that we settle this matter for the numbers based and put into the resolution. For those of you, 2 Highland SP LLC is Byram Self-Storage. Do you know where that facility is in Portchester along North Main Street? Actually, it's off North Main Street. It's in the street in the back. If you have any questions with regard to the settlement, I'd be happy to discuss the parameters of it and how we got to these numbers.
Well, just give an overview. I mean, it is a fairly substantial reduction, but.
Yeah, well, what was happening was this property was carried for many years grossly underassessed. It was assessed in 2018, it was assessed at $4,241,000. In 2016, the property was sold, and as part of the sale, there was a deed that was recorded that reflected a $16 million purchase price. So in 2020, the assessment was raised from $4,241,000 to $17,982,000, which is $2 million above the sale price in 2016. So that number raised the property owner's taxes from $164,000 a year to about $576,000 a year. So this kind of got caught up, I believe, in the revaluation, and when the revaluation company saw the sale, they bumped the number up to the amount of the sale. When we did some more investigation with counsel for the owner, we learned that this was more complicated than just a simple transaction, a simple buyer and seller. The buyer here bought 2 facilities, unrelated facilities. One was in Bridgeport, and then there was this one in Portchester. They did it as the back end of a 1031 exchange. The contract that we finally saw contained both projects in it, and the allocation of the purchase price was left up to the purchaser. For a variety of reasons, the purchaser allocated $16 million of the purchase toward this facility and less toward the Bridgeport facility. When we looked at the income and expense numbers for this, we began to see that that was really just an arbitrary number. They had put it in there for purposes of the 1031, and they had put it in there for purposes of their new depreciation for this particular facility. The real number, we believe, is more in the $8 to $10 million range, which is what we ended up settling for. We did some other research on 1031 exchanges nationwide with some of the appraisal institutes, and it's clear that the back end of a 1031 exchange, not on a residential property, but on an income property, oftentimes will pay a premium of 23 to 25% of what the property would have sold for in a normal arm's length transaction. So there was that bump in the increase. There was the way it was allocated, but when we went back and drilled down on the numbers, we realized that these are the real numbers. And if we let this, we were trying to settle this as quickly as we could, because if we let this go with that large a difference, it would have quickly added up to a gigantic refund for the school district. So this caught our radar, and we're trying to nip it in the bud. You see, there's only 2 years.
All right, thank you. And the school district and the village are both aware of
Yes,
this?
in fact, as you know, we've been having quarterly meetings with them. We've been telling them that this was going to be settled. It probably would be a six-figure refund from the school district and a less than six figures from the village, but that it was going to be a significant refund as well. But again, unlike has happened in the past, we're nipping this in the bud before it morphs into even bigger refunds.
Better 2 years than 10 years.
Right.
Questions from the council?
I just have a question. That building was renovated at one time. Was that before this owner? Or-
Yes.
It was done before this owner, okay, because
Yeah,
I
Tom,
know.
historically, the building was owned by a guy named Mort Patchen, and he converted it into a self-storage building, and it was carried at that about $4.5 million assessed number while it was a self-storage facility for a number of years. This company that bought it is a REIT, and like I said, this was part of a 1031 exchange, so a portion of the premium that they paid was for that reason, and a portion of it was just with regard to the allocation they did between the two facilities.
Okay.
All right. May I have a motion and a second, please?
Second.
Please call the roll, Hope.
Councilperson Jaffe?
Yes.
Councilperson Axelrod?
Yes.
Councilperson Jackson?
Yes.
Councilperson Nardi?
Yes.
And Supervisor Zuckerman?
Yes. Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, everyone. Stay cool.
Thank you. Good night, dear.
Our next resolution is approving the appointment of Joanna Bavosa to the position of Rye Town Court Clerk. Debbie, you want to touch on this briefly, please?
Yeah, very simply, we are budgeted for 4 full-time court clerks. 1 clerk retired and left about a month or so ago. So the judges conducted a search for a replacement, and they interviewed and selected and are recommending we engage Joanne Bavosa.
And this is the determination of the judges. This is not, the town itself did not participate in the interviews. This was a judge's recommendation to us. We, of course, have to approve it because we pay. So, any questions, council?
Who retired?
Pardon me?
Who retired? I feel like I'm sitting in a,
Eleanor Humphrey.
thank you.
One of our new clerks, because we only had one before. So, motion and a second, please.
So moved.
I'll second.
Please call the roll.
Councilperson Jaffe?
Yes.
Councilperson Axelrod?
Yes.
Councilperson Jackson?
Yes.
Councilperson Nardi?
Yes.
And Supervisor Zuckerman?
Yes, thank you. The next is to enter, actually, it's a renewal of the engineering contract for AI, meaning Dolph Rotfeld. to provide general engineering and consultant services. I have one comment. Hope when you do the final, when you make all of this final, please change in the resolution, add, if you see the second whereas clause, has submitted a proposal, can you add dated July 8th, 2022? And if you notice, that is the proposal that is the next. So that it's not just a proposal, it's that proposal. Dolph has been our engineer, our consulting engineer for some period of time. They were operating on a very old contract, and we felt that it was time to enter into renewal. The rates are slightly higher. The rates are set forth on a schedule for the various principal project managers, et cetera. And by the way, this is very similar to the one we just entered into with the Ragtime Park Commission for the same thing. So, any questions? Lindsay?
Nope.
Okay. May I have a motion and a second, please?
So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll vote.
Councilperson Jaffe?
Yes.
Councilperson Axelrod?
Yes.
Councilperson Jackson?
Yes.
Councilperson Nardi?
Yes.
And Supervisor Zuckerman?
Yes. The next resolution is for an application to the Consolidated Funding Process, a CFA. This one is for climate smart communities. Debbie, you want to touch base on what this is?
Yes, the town has been working in partnership with the Village of Rybrook and the Portchester School District now for many years in an attempt to fund an engineering project to address the stormwater problems that plague the area in the Avon Circle neighborhood and the ball fields of the Portchester Middle School. There have been a series of grants funded which enabled us to conduct studies and then enabled us to create an implementation plan to address the problems identified by this study, and we are now attempting to fund the work. And this has been, I think this will be our third attempt to obtain grant funding to underwrite this project. At this point, adjusted for inflation, this project is a little over $7 million, and will only go forward if grant funding is obtained. The Village of Rybrook has also submitted a grant application to Westchester County, and the town, for its part, will be now submitting a grant application to New York State.
We've already secured 4.3 million.
Now, is the city of Rye involved in this too?
No,
Not at all.
Not at
not
all.
at all.
Because they get, because that river, that's the same
There
river.
is some benefit, right? If we capture some water from the Blind Brook, there's
Well-
less to go downstream, but
A
there has not been.
substantial,
So,
let me finish, Linz, one sec. A substantial amount of the money that's secured is from the Westchester County Stormwater Fund. And the city of Rye cannot get money from Westchester County, even though this would affect them, because they're not part of the settlement. They haven't adopted the housing model code. So the county doesn't give them money. Discretion, it's called discretionary funding, which we in Rybrook are entitled to get. So we've secured the county money. Now we're trying to make up the difference with state money. We've made a couple of different applications, but this is the first time to the Climate Smart Communities program, which,
So now, if I'm doing the math correctly, Gary, and I just want to get this right, the project is currently around 7 million, and we already secured 4.3 million in funding.
yes,
Okay, so that leaves a remaining 2.7 million
yes,
that we have to, and the town is responsible for 25% of that 2.7 million.
yeah, but we're not going forward with that unless we get the 2 million that we're applying for.
Okay,
So in other words, hopefully the total grants will be for something like 6.3 out of the 7. And then Rybrook would be responsible for 50% and we would be responsible for 25, and I think the school district for 25.
no, I think that's a fairly reasonable, use of funds, whatever we have to put in for flood mitigation, so that I'm all in favor.
Okay. Any other comments? Nope.
No, just
A
that
mo-
this has been years in the making.
A motion, yeah. And it's
I'll
not,
make a
it's a
motion.
long way from finished.
Yeah, I know that.
A motion and a second, please.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Oh, let Lindsay get second this one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Councilperson Jaffe?
Yes.
Councilperson Axelrod?
Yes.
Councilperson Jackson?
Yes,
Councilperson Nardi?
Yes.
And Supervisor Zuckerman?
Yes, thank you. The next resolution is authorizing the submission of a second CFA application by the town of Rye. This is a bit more broad. The only, pardon me?
Three applications.
Well, it's one resolution. And the applications that we're submitting are for the bocce courts at Crawford Park, for, and this is strange, Rye Town Park, what we call the tunnel bathrooms, because it has to be submitted by a municipality, so the Rye Town Park Commission cannot submit. And we are submitting it with the support of the city of Rye. So that's how that's working. Which is the third, Debbie?
The Beaver Swamp Brook dredging in partnership with the Village of Amerenet.
Right, okay. And I just happened to talk to one of the trustees about that today, to make sure that that's going forward. So that's one of Lindsay's pets, right, Lindsay?
I am actually looking out my window at some of the neighbors' homes who have been flooded by Beaver Swamp Creek. So yes, it's important. I feel very important. It's been an area of the town that hasn't gotten a lot of attention. It's been dealing with flooding for quite some time.
All right, so those three applications, and they're being prepared by Millennium, our grant writer. And they're due on July the 29th, which is
Next week?
next week.
Gary, I just want one point of clarification. If we receive these grants, any one of these grants, we're not obligated to take the money or do the project, correct?
Well, we are obligated to do it. I mean, we can always change our mind, but this resolution says that we're willing to pay our match. And the match in, as far as I know, the match in parks and the match in, where's these Beaver Swamp going? Is that a 50-50 or is that a,
No, it's actually 75-25, I believe.
all right. So, and the one under LWRP for the bathrooms is 75-25.
Yes.
So, so that's what we would be obligated, but we have 5 years to do it. So it's not like we have to put, do money this coming budget session. Because none of this is getting done, most likely, for this session.
Well, and then the 75-25 for Beaver Swamp Brook Creek, however you call it, would be split between the Village of Mamaroneck and the town of Rye.
Right,
That 25%.
right. Okay,
And what's the breakdown for the bocce courts?
50-50. But we're also hoping to get private donations for that.
I mean, I just have to be honest, and, obviously I'm in support of this, and there's no harm in making an application. But I do think that we should have a broader discussion about the open space in Crawford Park especially. I heard from a lot of people, and I just have to share their opinion if you don't mind. But there are a number of people I've heard from that are concerned about the open space in Crawford Park and the way it's allocated, and they are concerned every time they see something new coming about that, more space is being taken away. So, I hope that we can be cognizant of that and look at the plans in the future and go from there.
Well, Lindsay, I sympathize with that, but I'm not aware of any open space that has been taken up in any way, shape, or form by anything that we've done since any of us have been on the board. There's been nothing. So I know that there's a fear that if you do one thing, you're going to do something else, like a domino effect. But I don't think that's necessarily true. Everything that was open 6 years ago is still open, and there are no plans to do anything else. And we'll have a further discussion. First of all, we haven't gotten any grants. So, this application is to, this resolution is to put a grant in to see if we can get money for it. I think that we can have further discussions on it. I know that what you've just mentioned is one point of view, and I think there are other points of view. So, anyway, any other members of the council wish to speak on this?
We had spoken a little bit about this. If they were to come to being, the chess tables in the bocce court, it's in what we would consider an active area of the park, correct? So we still have our green fields and our green fields, which are undeveloped. But there is a place where we have the pavilion and we have the butler huts, whatever they're called, playground, and that's more active space. So this would be within that region of active space, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, this would be
Yes.
right near the pavilion.
So that is already an area that we designate for community activities and endeavors, and as long as we're not encroaching on the green spaces.
No, we're not. In
Yeah.
fact, we've enhanced the green spaces with gardens and things like that. We have like 3 or 4 gardens in the last 4 years, 5 years that we've put in. So,
And I do love the fact that not only is it the bocce courts, Lindsay, but it's chess tables. And I know we've been talking about a way to bring together community of Portchester and Rybrook, and thinking maybe through the children and through a joint endeavor between the school districts or something, using that space accordingly. So I know Vic already has chess that happens in the mansion that sometimes overlaps with other activities, so it'd be nice to have different space
We
for
have
those
a very
groups.
active chess program. When the weather's good, they move outdoors.
Yeah,
When
which
the
then
weather's
frees us up for
cold,
other,
we brought them indoors.
yeah, frees us up for other endeavors. Okay.
all right, thank you. Anything, Tommy, Jill?
No, I just think it's let's just apply for the grants. Let's try to get the money first, and then once we if we can secure grants, then we can go forward with discussions.
All right, motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Hope, please call the roll.
Councilperson Jackie,
Yes.
Councilperson Axelrod,
Yes.
Councilperson Jackson,
Yes.
Councilperson Nardi,
Yes.
and Supervisor Zuckerman.
Yes, thank you. And I believe that completes the resolution portions. We have reports. I don't see Denise on. Do we have an assessor report?
I spoke to Denise. She doesn't have anything to report.
I have something to report.
Oh, okay.
The BAR process is going very well. That's my report for the assessor.
I think there is a board meeting tonight as well, so.
And do we have a Crawford Park report tonight or not, Deb? I know there was something.
Camille is on vacation, and Vic was not able to make the meeting due to illness. So I do have the report. It was submitted. I do have it up. I could read it to you, but I don't know that I can add much.
Well, it is attached, and everybody could read it. I just want to note that the charging station monthly report, as we projected, went way down once we started to charge.
Are we still covering the cost?
It's
We are
fine.
covering our costs.
That is
We are
good.
not, we are no longer losing money on the charging stations.
That is good.
Okay, good.
That's positive.
Debbie, sorry.
Yes.
Actually, and Gary too, the entire board, I just saw something, or I read something, yesterday that I found as an interesting point of reference, and they were talking about usage of electricity to charge cars versus, other activities, and what this article argued was that it takes more energy to charge a car than it would to cool a home or provide power to a home for a certain amount of time. And I was wondering, do we do anything in instances as far as energy shortages on hot days like today, when, we might want to kind of conserve the power grid for cooling as opposed to charging cars? I know it's something that's a little bit out there, but I just read it today and kind of made me think of the chargers. And
I want to make sure that I understand your question. What you're
So-
asking is, does Crawford Park do anything to reduce energy usage on particularly hot days?
Well, yes, that would be one question, but the second question is, do we sort of put a hold on charging just to preserve the grid on particularly hot days?
We've never put a hold on the charging stations, ever.
Okay.
I'm not entirely sure how I would do it, but I do know it's possible. And if that's a policy recommendation of the council, I'm happy to look into it. Given how low the utilization has dropped of our charging stations, I wonder if
That would make a difference.
that would,
'Cause I
well,
do know
whether the
sometimes-
juice would be worth the squeeze, as it were.
Well,
Right.
like I said, and again, I'm in full support of electric cars. I think it's great and, very environmentally friendly, but in the hot days when people are losing power, it's sort of, if we could do something, but I understand.
At this point, because we've made such a tectonic change in the policy for the charging stations, and the whole thing, the
Yeah.
whole policy was designed initially to try to encourage the use of electric cars and to provide charging stations. We found that there was a steady increase in utilization, and just a month ago, we made a big change in policy and started to charge. So utilization dropped way down, which was not unexpected. In fact, we've just put signage up. I would suggest that this would not be the time to turn off the machines, because I think it
No,
would inadvertently send the wrong message to anybody who actually does pull in and want to use it.
I think also what I think is most instructive is that we've had under consideration whether we should add more charging stations. And the fact is that if our current stations are not being used very much, there's no need to put new ones in. Just leave them the way they are. Because there are a lot of grants out there for charging stations, and we've had a couple of presentations, right, Debbie, from different companies. They want to put charging stations into the park. One company wanted to put 20 charging stations in, and we held off on that. And it's obvious that we don't need it. I think with the prevalence of electric vehicles today, especially in this area, most people charge their cars at home. And so the big pull to get people to charge at the park was that it was free. So if somebody didn't want to use their electricity at home, they could charge at the park for free. Now they're charging at home, obviously, because they haven't gotten rid of their cars. They're just charging them somewhere else.
I have to leave. I gotta get to.
I thought you said 8 o'clock.
It starts at 8. I have to leave. I gotta go.
Thank you.
All right. Everybody have a good night.
Councilman Nardi has left the house. We're done anyway, Tommy.
This, Lindsay, I will take this as an opportunity to remind people to sign up for the Grid Rewards program, which I believe we have information on the town site, because it's something that sustainability worked on. But it is an app that will tell people when to decrease electric usage and actually delivers alerts straight to your telephones to enable you to say, okay, I'm going to turn power off at this time and conserve. And I do think the town also signed up for Grid Rewards. So someone in this building gets these alerts.
Yes, great. That's something I think is important because, like I said, now we're just dealing with the extreme heat. But thank you for that.
Yeah, Debbie's looking at me, not remembering the hours we spent handing out these papers in the freezing cold.
Yeah.
I really do remember that. In fact, we have a grant that is underwriting our purchase of an electric truck as a result of the success of the Grid Rewards program last year.
Correct.
What you saw on my face is that I don't believe I was ever contacted by Sustainable Westchester to notify me that the town could sign up for Grid Rewards. I was and remain ready. In fact, the Reisner family is in the Grid Rewards program, and when I get those text messages, those light everything. To the extent that we have anything plugged in anymore, we unplug everything.
And
it's
they alert
works.
you.
They
do.
alert
It won't
you.
be as necessary and repeatedly. They're like a parent.
This is a bad time of day to use
Yes.
electricity. And it will
Yes,
tell you
it's
it's a
true.
bad time of day to use electricity.
Well, we also got a check at the end of last season. It was
Oh,
really
did you?
great.
This is my first year doing it, so I'm
Yes.
curious to see.
Real money.
Yeah, which is very
Good.
nice.
The Jaffe family is very bad with energy conservation, so we don't get checks. We just get
Scolding letters.
angry texts.
All right, next up, we don't have Vic, so no Director of Parks and Facilities report. Just to say, we are on the cusp of starting our snack bar. And the problem with not starting it has nothing to do with the equipment or anything else. It's connecting the software for the POS system. Is that correct, Debbie? And all of that nonsense that we have to go through?
Our POS system is going to integrate with our accounting software, and getting everybody on the same page entails getting everybody on conference calls at the same time. And it's a little bit like herding cats, but we're getting there. I think
Okay.
tomorrow should be the final group conference call, where we get it all done.
All right, great. Financial. I know we had the audit. Dave, do you have anything?
No additional reports, just the.
I just wanted to point out that the in-rem receivables, if you look at the chart for our 2018 taxes, it shows only 3 properties. That is not quite accurate because this is as of June 30th. We had 1 property pay their taxes in July, and that's 115 Midland, and that was over $70,000, I believe. And it's my understanding that 562 Willett will be paying by the end of the month, which would leave only one property. That is on our list. And if you go back to the other one, the tax receivable summaries, tell me if I'm not reading this correctly, but the tax receivables as of 6/30/21 was over 5 million, and as of 6/30/22 was only 2.7 million. And that was reflected in the auditor's report. Actually, the audit, even that report was good. The receivables were down, so it's even down further now. So those are good reports. And Nick is not on. I don't think he has anything to say. Did he give you any messages? Nope. And town clerk's report is attached.
And I'd like to mention about the county
Shredder?
shredder. Right, the county shredder is coming to 222 Grace Church Street this Saturday from 10 to 1.
That's for
For
the
the
residents.
residents,
For the
right.
residents.
She's thinking.
I have an announcement.
Announcement from Debbie.
The Hillside Avenue Bridge replacement project is continuing very well, and it's expected that the completion will be at the end of August.
That'll be good. Then we can start on Otter Creek.
That's right. We have all of our paperwork in, and we're waiting for a sign-off from the DOT that we are ready for our contract. So everything is there and waiting.
Good.
And I understand that from the engineer that everybody's waiting.
DOT does not move quickly. All right. Are there any comments from the public on our Facebook, website, anything?
No, there are no comments on Facebook.
Okay. Comments from the council? Starting with Lindsay on the screen.
Nothing. Everyone stay cool and stay well.
Okay.
Stay well, Lindsay.
Pam?
Thank you. It's been a rough year.
I mean, I would like Lindsay to stay well. That's my major commentary for tonight. But everyone just.
That's all right. Lindsay brings it on herself to some extent. I must say, she does, right? She's got this problem with her knee, and she's going hiking in Utah.
Yes, I'm very excited. It's going to be gorgeous.
I'm sure it is. Just
Very
take,
hot in
just
August.
take care of yourself.
I did not book the trip, but it's going to be great.
Okay. Pam, anything from you?
No, just everyone take care.
Thank you, Jill.
Yes, I will echo those sentiments,
Thank
beginning
you.
with myself as I'm melting.
Okay.
Stay cool, she said while actively sweating.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, so moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. See you all next month.